Good morning, and welcome to the Message Talk Show. This is your host, Alex Gordon, tuning in for another Thursday. You know, every Thursday I'm excited, but today's Thursday, I'm even more excited today. You know why? Because I woke up at 6 o'clock this morning just to make sure the microphone was going to work. Even though I set up from last night, I was setting up just to make sure the microphone was going to work, just to make sure all the systems were in place for today's show. Because today we have a very special guest on our show today. Now, let's take a peek and say, how are you, sir? How are you doing?
Alex, I am doing great, and it is so wonderful to be with you and with all my mates across the pond. Thank you for having me.
Hey, it's great to have you. So before we jump into the middle of the show today, let's just play a show reel from Mr. Bob Burg.
Nice way to live life, but a financially profitable way as well. Some people might ask, but isn't that kind of naive? Isn't it naive? Isn't it a bit unrealistic to believe that in today's day of self-absorption, corporate scandals, and dog-eat-dog competition, that one can actually give their way to success?
So, ladies and gentlemen, it is my honor to ask you to join us in welcoming Bob Burg.
We need to be able to deal with people in a way that's constructive, in a way that's helpful. Keep focus. You can't be focused on your money. You must be focused on bringing value, because that's what turns into money. When you combine excellence and consistency, you create truly great value. It's never about the numbers. The numbers are a result of caring about the people. When you sell on price, you're a commodity. When you sell on value, you're a resource. Every time you have a referral, what you've basically done is created the opportunity for more customers, more referrals, and more business build. See, many people, there's sort of a misnomer about selling. People think selling is about trying to convince someone to buy something they don't want or need. That is not selling. That's called being a thief. Okay? I define selling simply as discovering what the other person needs, wants, or desires, and helping them to get it. When you're selling, you're giving. How can I say that? What are you giving them? I suggest you're giving them time, attention, counsel, education, empathy, and most of all, value. You know, it's often been said that success in business, success in life is based about 10% on technical skills and 90% on people skills. The single greatest people skill is a well-developed and authentic interest in the other person. All the great leaders, the greatest leaders, the top influencers, the highest producers in the business, right? The highest money earners, that's simply how they run their lives and conduct their businesses. They're always looking for ways to place other people's interests even before their own, finding ways to add value to their lives.
Don't focus on the money. Bob Burg says, don't focus on the money. So for 30 years, you have been traveling the world, helping people, helping entrepreneurs to communicate their value. But we live in a transactional society that's focused on money, not value, focused on money. So how has that been going?
So the interesting thing, Alex, is that those who focus on the money tend to make less of it than people who focus on providing value to others. But if that sounds naive, let's ask, well, why that is, okay? Because it's a good question. And here's what I would say. I say this when I speak to groups of salespeople all over, salespeople and entrepreneurs, and that's this: nobody is going to buy from you because you have a quota to meet. Okay, they're not going to buy from you because you need the money. They're not going to buy from you because you want the sale. They're not even going to buy from you because you're a really nice human being. They're going to buy from you because they believe that they will be better off by doing so than by not doing so. And when you think about it, why else would anyone buy from you or from me or from anyone else, right? What this means, this is great news because it means that entrepreneur or salesperson who can look for ways to bring value to that person, to make that other person's life better, to discover what they need, what they want, what they desire, and help them get it.
But
That's
the most difficult point there that you just made, 'cause you said about transferring, it's about the belief, the person that you're selling to believing that what you have is going to meet their need. How does the salesperson transfer that belief into someone else?
it's not so much transferring your own belief, although that's important to believe in what you're doing, of course. But remember, it's all about that other person. So the question is, well, how or what would you do? How would you ensure that that other person does feel that way? Okay, so you start by asking questions. See, the biggest part, the most important part of the sales process, okay, is the discovery. See, selling is simply discovering what the other person needs, wants, and desires and helping them to get it. You do this through asking questions and then listening, and really, really listening and taking in what they are saying and understanding that what they say and what you heard may not be exactly what they meant. Why is that? Because as human beings, we all come from our own set of beliefs and we interpret things according to our belief system, right? So we need to make sure to ask the questions, to listen, and then to make sure to tactfully and politely clarify, to make sure we understand exactly what they're looking for. Only at that point, Alex, are we in a position to then connect the benefits of what we sell, of our product or service, with their needs, with their wants, with their desires, with their goals, with their values. Once we do that, now when we ask them to take action, we're simply asking them to do something they've already told us that they want to do. But the sales process is all about them. It's not about us. And that's why, yeah, is it a transactional world? Sure. But most people are not nearly as successful as they would like to be. The ones who are the ones who don't make it transactional. They make it relational, and they have an absolute laser focus on the other person.
Wow. Make that statement again. That's just powerful. You said most people who don't make it transactional, most people who make it transactional
are not nearly as successful as they'd like to be. You can have a certain amount of success by operating transactionally, sure. Okay, if you work hard enough, you work long enough, and you do enough sure. But that's a very difficult way to do business. It's difficult to be very successful that way, and it's difficult to sustain success that way. It's the people who are relationship oriented, who are internally motivated, but other focused. Okay, always looking for ways to bring value to others. Those are the people who have both short-term and long-term sustainable success.
Now you call this the go-giver way. What got you to this point? What was the journey to this point when this realization hit you?
I think it was probably, it was close to 40 years ago. I had been in sales. I mean, I'm an old guy, Alex. You're a young guy. You're a young, good-looking guy. You've got everything in front of you. I'm 63. I'm my days in the past. But so this was close to 40 years ago, and I'd been in sales for a couple of years, and I had done fairly well. I had learned sales. I'd studied sales. But I a couple of years after starting, I went to work for another company, and I was in a slump. I was in a sales slump, as happens from time to time, but this was a big one, and I was finding it very difficult to get out of it. And in that, I panicked, and I did what a lot of young salespeople in a slump do. I focused even more on myself and making the sale and get right. And at a certain point, there was a guy at the company where I worked. He was an older guy. He wasn't even in the sales department. I think he was in the engineering department, if I remember. Nice guy. Didn't say much, but one of these people, you know how when they do say something, it's always profound, right? And I think he saw me as someone like Joe in The Go-Giver, who I would write about with John David Mann 20 years later, after that, or 30 years later, whatever. But so he saw me as like a Joe in the story in The Go-Giver, that young, ambitious, aggressive, up and coming salesperson working very hard, but whose focus wasn't in the right place. And he took me aside and he said, Burg, he was a last name kind of guy. He said, Burg, can I give you some advice? And I said, yeah, please do. I need it. And he said, if you want to make a lot of money in sales, he said, don't have making money as your target. Your target, he said, is serving others. Now, when you hit the target, you'll get a reward, and that reward will come in the form of money. And you can do with that money whatever you choose. But never forget, he said, the money is simply the reward for hitting the target. It's not the target itself. Your target is serving others. Alex, this is where it kind of hit me. And it's where I first began to understand that great salesmanship is never about the salesperson.
Wow.
Great salesmanship is never about the product or the service, as important as those are, of course. Great salesmanship is about the other person. It's about the value you add to another human being. Really, it's about another person's life being better just because you are part of it. And
Wow.
I think that when you approach selling from that standpoint, I really think you're 9 steps ahead of the game in a 10-step game.
I don't think our institutions teach that kind of understanding to our young entrepreneurs
Yeah.
about
And,
this
you
level
know,
of service.
and it's interesting too, because the old English root of the word sell was salan, which meant to give. So when you think about it, when you're selling, you're giving, right? And that's where we saw in that clip, right? Or, well, what are you giving when you're selling? Well, you're giving time, attention, counsel, education, empathy, and value. Okay. So when you think about it, when you're selling, you're giving. Selling's a wonderful profession. It allows you to give value to others and make a very healthy living while you do it.
Wow. There's like let me give you a quote from the book. It is that I think it was Pinder who was speaking, and he said most people operate with a mindset that says to the fireplace, "First, give me some heat, then I'll give you some logs. I'll throw some logs on the fire, but
Right.
give me the heat first." What do
Right.
you mean by that?
So that's where we say that most people kind of have the process backwards. Okay. So, and that's a good example. Another one would be going to a bank to open up a bank account and saying to the person at the bank, well, I want to open an account, but first you give me an interest payment, pay me some interest, then I'll make a deposit. Life doesn't work that way. Life doesn't work that way. The giving part comes first. Okay. So, this is why we say money is an echo of value. The value has to come first. You breathe out, breathe in. Breathe out, which is giving, breathe in, which is receiving. Neither are more important, but the focus, it needs to start with the giving. And I think when we go from that, laws of life say what? You plant before you harvest. You sow before you reap.
Correct.
Well, you've got to focus on giving before you receive it, but then you've got to allow yourself to receive. You receive in gratitude. You can't block that either, because both giving and giving and receiving are not opposite concepts. Giving and receiving are simply two sides of the very same coin, like breathing out and breathing in, right? They work in tandem, but it always begins with the giving.
Wow. It only begins with the giving. So let me just
Yeah.
throw this at you. Why do some people see the world in terms of its limitations. So there's not enough resource around for everyone. While some people are having tremendous success with this concept of giving, and they see the world as having all their treasures. How comes we have that kind of split in mindsets in our economy?
Well, it's all about belief systems. It always begins with belief systems, the way we see the world. This was really first pointed out to me in a magnificent book that was published in 1960 called Psycho-Cybernetics by Dr. Maxwell Maltz. It sounds like a fancy title. It's an easy read, and it was one of the first books I read when I started in personal development. And it really showed me that everything we do in life, okay, every thought we think and what we say and what we do is all basically predicated on how we see the world, what I call our belief system. Our belief system is handed to us, well before we're old enough to think critically and to question premises and everything. So you could say our belief system is a combination of upbringing, environment, schooling, news media, television shows, movies, everything, popular culture, cultural mores, right? But it begins very young. And our worldview takes shape at a very young age. Again, long before we had the ability or the sophistication to be able to question, is this right? Is there? So we see the world in a certain way. Most people, are brought up with a lack mentality. It's just how it is. It's how the world, kind of is, the messages we get. But we see it all the time. Hey, one of my great friends, Randy Gage, is world renowned as a prosperity teacher. A prosperity, and he's written books and he's all over the internet. He's really great at what he does. There's some great prosperity teachers out there, and I recommend tapping into as many as we can, because I think prosperity is something we need to study. And everybody who talks about it, all the great prosperity teachers, whether Randy Gage, David Nagel, Sharon Lechter, Ellen Rogan, Ken Honda, Bob Proctor, 99% of what they talk about is the unconscious and getting dropping all those things that keep us from prosperity. But Randy makes a great point. He says, if you ever watch a movie that, a film that is a big selling film, you'll notice that there's a central theme, that there are typically two types of people, right? There's the good people who are typically portrayed as poor, victimized, but they're always happy, right? They're always poor but happy, and they're honest, and they're all the good. But these people are always taken advantage of by who? The rich people, who are mean and evil and nasty and only care about money, and they step right. And so he makes this great point about the first Spider-Man movie, where Peter Parker is talking to his Uncle Ben, and they're talking about their being poor and so forth. And Uncle Ben says this. Now listen to this, that he says to Peter. He says, well, Peter, we may not be rich, but at least we're honest. Oh, what a horrible, horrible message for a young kid watching a movie to see, right? Because what's the presupposition? What's the premise? If you're honest, you're probably poor. If you're rich, you're probably not honest. Now, I say, but that's just a movie. Well, no, first of all, it's just about every movie, but it's also pretty much everything we hear in the media, everything we hear or read here in the media, in schools, and that, we're brought up to think that, wealth is bad and wrong, and you had to step on people's toes, and there's a limited supply of this, and there's not, right? People grow up that way, and that's all they know. Well, what are they supposed to think? And again, it's unconscious. It's unconscious. So, there's a whole bunch of reasons why. So, that's why I think it's important to study prosperity, because and study it proactively, because the garbage that we get, the horrible messages about prosperity and money and business and all these things, that comes to us all the time, everywhere. I think we have to proactively study prosperity and get those good ideas into our heads.
Wow, that throws me into another point where you said in the book that people get what they expect. So we're in a self-fulfilling prophecy. Yeah,
exactly. And that's where confirmation bias comes in, right? Which basically just means that when we come across new information, if it agrees with our already existing beliefs, we accept it as true. If it
Wow.
doesn't, we ignore it. So if we grow up thinking that wealthy people are dishonest, okay, and we think that, we can see all these great stories about people who have made their fortunes by providing a valuable service to others, who've done so ethically and honestly, and I mean, we kind of ignore it. But when we hear about somebody who ripped someone off, or a business that, or we hear about Volkswagen falsifying their emissions standards, or one of the banks in the U.S. that were taking advantage of customers and opening false accounts. Well, then it's of course, yeah, these wealthy people, they're all crooks. Well, those are the stories we hear and believe, and so it just confirms our already held biases about this.
Wow. Wow. Now, in your book, in the Go Giver, you talk about I think it's 5 stratospheric laws in there. One of them talks about compensation.
Yeah.
And you say that we're compensated on the basis of the amount of people that we serve.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Mhm.
But I can see that concept kind of, taking hold for people involved in sales, people involved in commission type work or whatever. How do you then talk to someone who's not involved in sales, who's not an entrepreneur? How can they see that as being compensated by the number of people that they serve?
Yeah. It doesn't hold as much for someone who is working within a corporation, let's say, for a fixed salary. Okay. Not to the degree it would in terms of instantaneous, in terms of if you're in sales or you're an entrepreneur. However, even within a big company that you're working, or within someone else's small company that you're working, the more people you're able to serve directly or indirectly, the more valuable you make yourself to your employer, and the more money with which you'll be rewarded, because they know that it behooves them to pay you more money in order to keep you. Otherwise, you're most likely to go to another company or be recruited by another company who understands your value and wants you. So yeah, you're right though. It's not as direct necessarily and immediate as if you're a salesperson or entrepreneur.
But we live in an entrepreneurial society now. We live where we're conscious now that most solutions are not going to come from the government. Yeah, most solutions are not going to come from the government, because for some reason it just gets messed up sometimes.
Well, it's by the nature of government. It is a bureaucracy, and they whereas for an entrepreneur, the big payoff for an entrepreneur is to create value and change things and make things better. Okay. For a person in government, and this is not a disrespect, it's just how it is, how it's set up, it behooves them to not do anything wrong, right? It behooves them, the bureaucrat, to not do something that could get them in trouble. So it's like the status quo is the payoff for a government bureaucrat, whereas for an entrepreneur, the payoff is in actually making something better.
So the entrepreneur takes the risk to make it better.
To make it better, to make things better, because the entrepreneur benefits to the degree they add value, make things better. And remember, with the entrepreneur, they're spending their own money when they invest. With a bureaucrat in government or a politician, they're spending someone else's money. So they don't have as much of an incentive to make sure the money is spent well, spent correctly, and invested properly. And again, it's no disrespect to anyone. It's just the system itself. That's why a free market actually benefits so many more people. And by free market, I simply mean no one's forced to do business with anyone else. People do so on their own volition. And why I believe that a government that just provides the environment that protects people, obviously, from force or fraud, but otherwise kind of just leaves people mostly to just do business as they see fit. That's a government that actually creates a great environment for prosperity for all.
But isn't that the most difficult side, to create that environment that enables people to be prosperous, enables people to become more entrepreneurial? Isn't that difficult?
Difficult for who?
for the government itself, it's not
Sure.
it's not
Well,
used to it doesn't do it itself, but then
no.
you're asking it to create an environment to make this happen.
Yeah, you're actually asking government to kind of mind your own beeswax in a lot of cases, and that's not what they want to do.
So
That's why it's always a constant struggle. And of course, we're never talking about not helping people who can't take care of them, and who are the truly needy and who can't take care of themselves. There's a proper time and place, of course, for everything. But if you look at and we have this certainly in the US, I don't know, I can't speak for the UK. I suspect though it's the same pretty much everywhere, that many of the government rules and regulations that come about is not so much because it necessarily protects the little person. It's because somebody who from a group of what we call lobbyists, I don't know what you call them in the UK.
yeah, we call them the same thing.
Yeah, but they pay off. They basically pay through contributions and other forms of influence. They pay the politicians to make special rules, laws, and regulations that actually favor the big business or the special interest and so forth. And what that does is it actually hurts the the average citizen, and actually keeps the smaller businesses from being able to get as involved as they'd like, because it becomes cost prohibitive. So that's why I say that the more we can sort of, and again, governments function, a legitimate function, is to certainly protect from force and fraud, by all means. Absolutely. Free market doesn't mean you can do whatever you want, but it does mean that it makes it so that people have a choice.
Yeah, true.
So I think when people are allowed to live their lives in whatever the way they see fit in terms of pursuing their happiness, okay, so long as they don't infringe upon anyone else's rights to do the same, I think that's when
Wow.
we have a functioning, respectful, and prosperous society.
Wow. And the advent of the internet has changed our lives in the past, what? I would say over a concept of 20 years or so, we've been changing, but in the last 12 to 18 months, we have certainly changed the way we do business, the way we operate. And this concept of value has really, I think, helped us do business on the internet.
Yeah, well, I mean, I think like anything else, human beings will adapt. Okay. And so, for example, when the pandemic first began, people panicked, as they always do. And I mean, I think that's natural. It's part of human nature. But then people started to say, okay, now we know what we can't do. Okay. What can we do? What can we do? How do we provide value to others? How do we connect with others? How do we help others? And remember, before the pandemic, doing things on Zoom, sure, we did interviews on Zoom and there were some meetings on Zoom, but people weren't really doing business on Zoom, right? People weren't doing people started to see, if you wanted to do business, if you wanted to conduct, some classes, if you wanted to do this, you were going to have to use the technology that was available, right? And so now suddenly it's like, okay, well, this is an acceptable thing. We can do business this way. We can meet people there. We can have meetings this way. We can, and so, again, people adapt. And I think the fact that we have this technology is just, it's such a great thing.
Wow. So do you believe then, as a result of the internet, we are becoming better servants and better leaders at the same time?
No, I think it's like anything else. I think the principles always stay the same, right? The technology just allows us to do the things we do more effectively or efficiently. So, when I say all things being equal, people will do business with and refer business to those people they know, like, and trust. It doesn't mean they're going to do business with and refer business to those computers they know, like, and trust. They don't know, like, and trust computers. As far as doing business with, it's the person in front of the computer. So so it's the same thing. The technology just simply allows us to be able to connect with people. But if someone's connecting with another person and they're still focused only on themselves, and they're focused only on what they can get from the relationship, as opposed to, oh, same thing as in person. It just happens to be online.
Wow. That's so true. In the book, there was a distinction made between a good restaurant and a great restaurant. Now, in the UK, we have, we have loads of restaurants, and the food industry is massive. But when I read that, it really made me think: a good restaurant compared to a great restaurant. What's the distinction there?
Well, so a poor restaurant, okay, tries to give as little value as they can for the money they receive. A good restaurant tries to give as much value as they can for the money they receive. Okay, but a great restaurant works totally outside that. They just try to make it such an amazing, wonderful, immense experience that customer comes away feeling just fantastic. Okay, and that's the difference. It's just a matter of focus.
Wow. And you see that word experience, because even with the growth of coaching, the growth of speaking, the growth of all these service industries, it's the experience that people walk away with, why they want to do business with you, why they want to connect with you, why they want to grow with you. If there's no experience, then it won't happen.
Right. That's a wonderful point.
How do we then help those people who are not so connected to the technology, who are not so able to allow themselves to help people have this experience? Then how do we help people to do that?
Well, I mean, I think it depends on what the person's doing. Some companies really don't have to have a great online. I think, the better an online presence you have, and the more value you communicate through that, and the more seamless that you make it for people to do business with you, obviously the better. Okay. But when we talk about the experience, what we're really talking about is how you make people feel. That's really what it comes down to. It's how you make people feel. And regardless of the medium that you use, that's how you measure it. If people come away from doing business with you feeling so great about themselves, about you, about the experience, if they feel as though they've received so much more in value than what they paid, okay, while you're able to make a very, very healthy profit, that's how it's done. I mean, that's prosperity right there, that everyone comes away better off afterwards than they were before.
Wow. You made this statement before about everybody winning, because I remember seeing this post in your LinkedIn. You talked about everybody winning, and I said, well, I when I was growing up, when I was schooled, there was always a winner and a loser. You either won the race or you lost the race. You never really were educated to say everybody can win this, everybody wins. So even when I lose, I'm still winning. How do we then help this generation understand that, okay, you may not win at this moment in time, you may not win, but you're still winning. You've gained an experience that's going to help you. How do we help a generation to understand that?
Well, I mean, I think you just said it, that even if you don't win, if you had bettered yourself, there's a race, and let's say you've got a race, let's say we're talking track and field, and there's a 100-meter dash. Okay. Well, there's going to be someone who wins the race, and there's going to be others who don't win the race. So there is, in that case, there's a winner and a loser in terms of the race. But what if this person who ran the race, who didn't finish first, what if they had a better time than they had the last time? They bested themselves. What if they learned something in that race? Well, they still came away with experience that's going to help them advance towards success.
Wow. They still walk away with an experience to advance themselves to success. Wow. So if we're understanding that the tools by which we're using to measure our success aren't necessarily the tools we should be using all the time, then.
Again, I think it depends on the situation. Okay, the big thing is, do we advance? Do we help the other person advance? Do we make the world a better place for us having been here at every moment? As we end, I want to read something to you. This is from a book by Okay, it's called The Untethered Soul by Michael Singer. Okay, and I keep this posted right here on my computer. Okay, and I think this is a good note to end on. Here it is. The highest thing you could do with your life is to make it so that every moment that passes before you is better off because it did. That's the highest definition of the purpose of life, that every single moment, every person, every moment that happens to unfold in front of you is better off because it passed by you. It was raised a little.
Wow. It was raised a little. So how do you in every situation make that raise, bring that lift to a situation?
You bring your best self to the situation.
Wow. You bring your best self to the situation. Here we have Bola commenting on your book, saying it's a great one, a great read.
Oh,
wow.
Thank you, Bola.
Man, thank you so much for being with us today, Bob Burg. It's been surely interesting hearing the concept of the go give away and the way that we do business, the way that we can help each other. So if there's a closing statement you'd like to make to the guys in London, but what would that be?
Closing statement, I would just say to remember that money is simply an echo of value, and to try to do your best to make every person's life in front of you a little bit better. And I just wish everyone a great last few months of the year, and love all of you over in the UK. I got so many great mates over there. It's just always an honor. And when I say honor, in this case, it's HONOUR.
Wow, it has certainly been an honor having you on the show today and hearing every word that you have to say. Have you got any? I know you have some programs that you do across the world. You want to talk about that a bit?
Yeah, I mean, if people visit burg.com, scroll down a little bit, you'll see some people at what looks like a coffee bar, which if you've read the book, you know that's Rachel's famous coffee cafe. This is our Go Giver Success Alliance, and we call it a membership mentorship community. And it's a wonderful group of successful people from all over the world. And we get together and we learn together, we share together, we strategize together, we collaborate together, and we build these wonderfully awesome relationships with one another. So check it out and join us if you'd like.
Wow. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you today for tuning into the Message Talk Show with Bob Burg, the Go Giveaway. So if you haven't read The Go Giver, you need to get that book and have a read today, because you can learn the 5 different laws that can affect us, that can help us make life a lot better. Thank you for tuning in today, guys. Miss the show. You got to be on the show.